why are people that have been through sort of trauma or life trauma are drawn to hard, difficult endurance challenges like ultras, marathons?
Yeah, I think quite a lot. I think there's a lot to that question. I think first of all is defining maybe what trauma is. So I'm guessing you're referring to like difficult life experiences or chronic stressful life events. Is that sort of thing you kind of mean in there when it comes to trauma?
Yeah, but like whenever I see a lot of people when they're doing a big endurance challenge, they're often doing it for a reason, and it's perhaps because they've lost a loved one, or they've gone through a bout of severe illness themselves, and maybe they've come out the other side, or it's been a relationship breakdown or something like that. But something big in their lives.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I think if you take a sort of step back, then I think about how trauma affects us. And there's been a whole host of studies on this now. A lot of people have heard of adverse childhood experiences, trauma. If you were to pop into the search engine or chuck on your Instagram feed, there's going to be something about trauma, isn't it? So I think it's in the zeitgeist, isn't it, of mental health at the moment. But I think a big part about trauma is that when we go through these really difficult experiences, it makes life quite stressful. I don't mean just like stress. I mean the physiological power of stress in our bodies. So our bodies are under this kind of chronic load of stress. And for a lot of people, when we're faced with discomfort, pain, anxiety, depression because of this trauma, what do? We try and find ways to get rid of those uncomfortable feelings, don't we? For some of us with maybe like addictions, it might be gambling, it might be, it could be drinking, drugs, Netflix binges, food. And I just think there's some people, I'm not quite sure why, but they're drawn towards like a different type of addictions, or something like endurance running, or like like challenges, or signing up for some crazy long distance event. I think there's something to that, because exercise, movement, it feels good. Signing up to something and having this challenge on the horizon feels really good. And I'm not trying to compare it to self-harm or anything like that, but I think there's a link there. I think it feels good, where we distract ourselves from this pain and we feel something else. And I think there's a bit of a thrill of the chase in that somewhere. And I think that's sometimes why people are drawn to these experiences, I think. But
yeah. Well, myself, I sort of personal experience from it, but there was 2013 in the worst state of health and fitness in my life, physically, mentally, but it was challenges that got me out of that. And it was I needed a reason that was bigger than the allure and the pull of the abuse that I was doing to myself through sort of drink, drugs, junk food and stuff like that. So for me, it was like having something even more that was bigger than that. That was something more important with more purpose than the hedonistic lifestyle I was living. Yeah. And that really helped me as well. But there was an element of also slightly enjoying the suffering, taking something from that. It was almost like a self-punishment, but like getting value from that suffering.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's something that comes up time and time again. And if I make this, I work in mental health. So my reference point on things often is mental health, mental illness. But if you take, just imagine someone now who's maybe suffering with an addiction. The old classic analogy would be the sort of pleasure-pain response when it comes to addiction, and how dopamine and various neurotransmitters plays a part in addiction. And so if someone has let's say there's an addiction, say it's alcohol, for example. They get home after a busy week. Life is really stressful. There's all this trauma in the background, and for want of a better kind of term or phrase, they've got this kind of seesaw in their brain, and it's tipped towards pain. So they physical pain, psychological pain, discomfort, restlessness, not quite feeling right. And what works in the short term, a drink from the cold beer from the fridge, maybe a few more. And then in that moment, that dopamine release kind of happens, that seesaw begins to sort of tip the other way, and it feels good. You feel good in the short term. But what happens, that seesaw will eventually go back the other way. Wake up next day, a little bit groggy, hungover, terrible night's sleep. That kind of swings back the other way. And what you kind of find then is, especially with addictions, is this absolute seesawing of this, and we're constantly fighting that. And I just think in many ways that endurance challenges and taking these things on, and you mentioned their kind of value, finding something that's kind of got you value, that just really helps sort of stabilize that seesaw, that dopamine, that pleasure-pain response to that you might get. There's a point in there somewhere, but I think this is an interesting kind of observation. When you're saying this, it's making me think about, how all these things kind of work in addiction, how we cope with things.
I suppose it's almost like when the rug has been swept up from beneath your feet. You lose that stability of living, or you have this reality in your head of what living was. That's completely changed. That's gone. And maybe like goal setting or setting something, a target or a focus for yourself, can give you a foundation to your living again. Yeah. It's like a structure, whereas before you may not know what to do day to day. What do I do now? What do I do now that my father's gone or my partner's left me? I'm a bit lost. Would a challenge and a focus or a goal give you a structure to your living again? Yeah,
absolutely. And again, it makes me think of there's a really amazing therapy called acceptance commitment therapy, or ACT. You may have heard of it. There's a very kind of quite famous book, which is The Happiness Trap by a guy called Russ Harris. It's been a therapeutic approach now for a decade or so, I think. And the reason I'm talking this, one of the elements of acceptance commitment therapy is values. And it's a lovely therapy because it's not about addressing a particular problem. It's a sort of trans-diagnostic approach. And talking about values and knowing what you value is really important, because so many people go through the stresses of life, the mundanity of life, the daily challenges, just getting up, going through the grind. And we often lose sight of what actually means something to us. And a huge part of that is know what you value, because a lot of people don't. I speak to a lot of people who they couldn't list their values, really. It would be a very, very difficult thing to do. And I just want to, like, a little sort of thought experiment for you, really. So I want you to imagine now that you are, fast forward 40 odd years into the future. You've lived a valued, good life, and it's your wake. Okay, so you've had a great life. It's your wake, and people who care about most will get up and talk about you. They give little speeches about you as a person. Like, what would you want to hear in those moments? And what might come up is certain things about you. You may not be living it right now, but these are sort of aspirations you might have. You want to be adventurous. You want to be fit for your kids. You want to be a good parent. You value your health, caring, kindness, whatever it might be. That will give you a whole list of kind of values to have. And in there somewhere are some values you can kind of hold dear now. And if you hold those values dear now, you kind of know where you're going. It's really, as you kind of just highlighting then, it's really difficult to know where you're going if you haven't got the values to kind of guide you in that direction. So I think, like, for every person who is really struggling, who takes up, CrossFit or an endurance event or signing up to some event, there's probably a whole lot of people who just don't have that. For whatever reason, they don't pick those things. They pick unhelpful addictions, or they spiral further, or they develop mental health difficulties. So I think there's, for every one person who's running a marathon because they've lost someone, or they've gone through something challenging, how many people are just, kind of gone by the wayside and having incredibly stressful, difficult lives with a whole other range of stresses popping into life. And so it's great that some people can find that outlet, I think, and almost like a helpful self-harm in many ways.
I think that's a brilliant point, because not everyone at that marathon start line has gone through trauma. There's going to be a lot of people that have gone through trauma and chosen a different path and chose to channel that into things that aren't conducive with maybe like a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, and for no fault of their own. It's just the way life has happened. Yeah.
So are endurance events a good form of therapy for getting you back on track, putting yourself through that pain and suffering and the 26.2 miles of a marathon? Would you say that is it as good as, mental health solutions or therapies or assistance, or is it better?
Ooh, yeah. I think there's so many things to it. And if I was to have one bit of wisdom I've picked up over the years, is that there's never, ever one cause for one problem. When it comes to mental health, there's just a whole range of different causes, and environmental factors, social factors, family factors, financial factors. I go on and on and on. But I think in terms of like exercise in itself, it goes without saying that exercise has a substantial impact on your mental health. Two kind of big studies I can think of last couple of years. One was Bensing in 2023, Bensing and colleagues in 2023. This huge umbrella review. So they looked at hundreds of studies across tens of thousands of participants, and they were looking at impact of exercise on a whole, compared to lots of other factors, on mental health difficulties, anxiety, depression, psychological distress. And what they find, the answer is pretty obvious. They found that exercise has a substantial effect compared to other things, or at worst, it'd be comparable. So it's up there with the best therapies as being helping alleviate things like depression, anxiety. And when it came to depression, it was high intensity exercise was kind of creeping to the top there of the best intervention when it comes to form of exercise. Things like yoga and that sort of kind of more mindful activities are really good for anxiety, and across the board. And then a couple of years, maybe I think it was 2024, there's another, again, a huge systematic review by Noah et al. And colleagues, and just sort of confirmed a lot of this stuff. Exercise is a significantly great intervention for depression. And again, who knew?
Yeah.
And again, I always, and I think it takes all these, very, very intelligent people carrying out all these studies and things. But I think it's quite intuitive to people who regularly exercise and regularly do these things. Because do you ever regret exercising? Do you ever regret putting your mind to something and completing a challenge? I don't think anyone sort of does. And I think that says a lot. But yeah, I think exercise is one of the most important factors I think we need to look at. The but here is, I think, when it comes to the original question about doing endurance events, is like asking where you are initially. If things are an absolute shambles, if you're dealing with just day-to-day chronic stress, chronic pain, maybe you're carrying a mental illness there, taking on a huge challenge and applying all that attention to that thing, how helpful might that be? Are you at risk of putting your body into far more stress? Are you at risk of letting other things important in your life deteriorate because you're focusing on one thing? And I think sometimes it's just approaching these things when you've got that bit of a baseline, a bit of stability. I think that'd be what I would say about it, because I've spoken to so many people. Again, in the job I do in the NHS, thousands of people down the line where they're just spinning so many plates. And you don't solve that problem by adding another big plate to spin. You solve that problem by just taking some of the plates down first and then spinning a plate.
Yeah, but it's funny because I see it personally. I see it personally where people in the running community or people who are doing massive endurance events, they're doing these huge challenges, and especially the Ironman, who it takes up all their life, all their training. It doesn't help them. It gets to the point, especially because they're layering on so much more, so many more things that they've got to consider, so many things they've got to do and achieve over such a long period, that failure can crush them if they don't get it right. I've seen it. I've got personal friends who have had almost breakdowns from throwing themselves into these endurance challenges. So in terms of getting your life right and sorting your life out first, how do you know when you have to sort your life out before? Because when you're in it, it's probably going to be difficult to see it. You're probably going to think, this challenge is the answer. This run is going to be it's going to solve all my problems. But two, then what are you addressing? How are you doing that?
Yeah. Again, a huge question with so many different kind of things to think about.
It's a big one, yeah.
I did post some videos on it on Instagram the other week, actually, and I'm going to do like a little sort of series of videos. But one thing I think is a really good thought experiment to sort of think about your own difficulties is to apply through the lens as a parent. It's like, what would you do for your kid going through a similar thing? And sometimes when we think about ourselves, almost like parenting ourselves and thinking of ourselves like a kid and what we would do to help our situation, that often brings loads of answers. And I know they sound really, really simple, but time and time again, all the evidence that's out there, all the the crappy podcasts I listen to, all the thousands of people I've spoken to over the years, what is often lacking is the basics, the basic stuff. And it boils down to 5 things. I always forget these 5 things. I'll try and remember these 5 things. One is sleep. We've got to be looking after sleep. A recent study just popped up on my Instagram feed the other day, looking at, it's not the duration of sleep, but your routine around sleep. So having that kind of stable routine is a great predictor of longevity and health. Sleep, what you eat and what you put in your body, again, really, really obvious. occupation, so some sort of meaning, some sort of purpose, whether it's paid work or voluntary work or just something that gives you that sense of achievement. Again, what am I on? 3? And
You've done 3.
I've got 2 more now. Connection.
Yeah.
And there's one more. Oh, no more. I forgot this now.
Sleep.
Purpose.
Exercise.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah.
And that exercise, it doesn't mean doing something crazy. It just means just moving your body more often than not, just getting the blood flowing where you can. Because exercise has that sort of double-edged sword. If you push too hard, you're burning out. You're burning kind of both ends potentially. But it all boils down to those size things. Ask yourself, like, if I had a kid now and I was parenting my kid, and I looked at those 5 areas, how are they doing with those 5 areas? What would I do differently for them? And kind of apply that same logic to yourself, and you will come up with things. I could talk, to the cows come about each of those areas, and look at those,
Well, it's very, like, because obviously when you do take on especially an endurance challenge, 2 or 3 of those things are affected directly from that challenge. Sleep's going to be poor. You're going to be exerting yourself too much. Maybe you're not taking on enough nutrition. Maybe you're not connecting with people as much because you're always bloody on the track and stuff like that. So if you're going to take on a big challenge, you need to get those points dialed in before you do. Otherwise, you're just going to make it 10 times worse. What are we getting wrong nowadays? What are we getting wrong with the way we handle mental health solutions and treatment?
I think we it's so easy to focus on the sharp end of the problem. So if someone turns up at a mental health organization or a mental health charity, it's very, very easy and very, very quick to label that as a mental health difficulty. Even the definition of mental health is really, really convoluted and difficult. It's the meaning of it. It's so widespread. So when we're faced with people who are struggling with aspects of their mental health, is we tend to focus on the mental health bit, on what are they thinking, how they're seeing the world, which is really important. But sometimes what we neglect is the bigger picture. I can remember when I was trained to be a mental health nurse back in the day, we kept learning about holistic care and seeing a person for their mental and their physical selves. I remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs and covering all the bases before we start thinking about changing the way we are. So we sometimes we focus on the sharp end, the mental health bit, or actually so many possible solutions to people's problem right in front of them. They're in the community. They're the connections they make. They're the people they love. The hobbies they have, the friends. There's those kind of things. So I think from a mental, and this is not to sort of be disparaging against the work I do in the NHS and my colleagues, but it's very easy to there's a mental health need there. Let's focus on working with that little thing. There's so much more to it, I think.
Yeah. So you've started, you and your business partner, I suppose.
It's our friend, mates,
You started a strength and wellbeing brand, and obviously so it's where. I mean, I'll let you explain it better than me afterwards, but you're essentially providing strength training with well-being support or training to men in the local community. Yeah. Now, what gap were you filling there? What don't you see in the wider offerings in the mental health world? What are they not providing that you thought we need to provide this?
Yeah, I guess this opens up then the question around kind of men's mental health. I feel I'll acknowledge that kind of first, and the men's mental health space, call it, is growing in popularity now, and it's probably to do with the algorithm and what I search and things and all that. But again, there's so many amazing organizations, but there's also so many people just spouting the same stuff online about men's mental health. But we have to acknowledge that when it comes to men's health in general, there are a lot of gaps. There's a lot of issues that we're failing as a society to really look after. Again, one of the probably the most visited websites, if you search online now and ask about men's mental health, is the Mental Health Foundation, and they've got a page about men's mental health, and it just cites some of the kind of the big studies over the last sort of few years. It might be a bit outdated now, but when it comes to suicide, we all know probably that men are 3 times more likely to take their life. When it comes to occupational deaths, homelessness, addiction, guess who are in the majority? It's men. If you sort of take a zoom out, then some really amazing work by Richard Reeves, who's a British-born journalist, lives in America now. Fantastic book of Boys and Men, and it just highlights how men now falling behind in almost every stage of academia and education compared to female counterparts. And this is not about driving a line saying women. This is just acknowledging that things have changed a bit now, and half the population, innocent boys, are falling behind because of probably the structures and systems that they've put up. All this stuff's going on, and I think what it kind of translates to in my line of work is that I speak to guys a lot of the time who probably aren't that adept at expressing themselves. They probably go through like maybe a charity or an NHS service, and maybe the service is being offered to them maybe isn't quite meeting their needs explicitly. So, like for example, women are very, very good, generally speaking, at expressing themselves emotionally, having more words to describe those feelings, connecting with other people. There's less stigma for whatever reason, whether it's social or biological, whatever, we could go into that. There's less stigma around being able to share a problem with someone. And you have this experience with the kind of women in your life, but if they're struggling with something, they're on the phone or they're sharing that problem with someone. I can't say that for my doing that myself to my mates, or my mates doing that. So there's stuff going on there. And when men then approach services, I'm sure I know there is wonderful work in lots of charities and organizations at NHS, but are we missing how we treat some guys? Are we not working with their strengths? Are we trying to sometimes shoehorn a bloke into sort of acting a bit more like a functional kind of woman? And I suspect sometimes we are, not all the time, but I suspect sometimes we are. And what I want to do with Stand Tall was have a place that focused on strengths. And these are the strengths I think the men have. Men like to learn stuff. So if you put a bunch of blokes in a room with a kind of shared goal of learning something, they often thrive. Like they won't stop talking about this thing. If men bond really well over shared goals, and if you get a bunch of guys in the gym working out together, you might not even know their first names. You might know nothing about the person you're with, but you're going to be there having a laugh, supporting each other, lifting weights. Your challenge feels good. All these kind of things. So I wanted to do something that was kind of working with the strengths I perceive. I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, by the way, but I didn't see that kind of approach in some of the work I do and some of the things I see in my community. And that's why I set up Stand Tall, was to just provide a space, essentially, guys could come and learn about looking after their well-being and their mental health. At the same time, they could go to a supportive gym environment and work out with other guys and get taught how to do things.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. Because, I mean, this is just anecdotally from sort of what I see. And you can correct me if I'm wrong with the statistics or, being a professional. But for women, a lot of the time, they want to be sort of loved and heard, right? But I think with men, it's different. I think that for men, they want to feel strong, capable, and useful. And from what I've seen is that we're often treating men with a female-centric strategy in terms of therapy or the services and the assistance that we offered. I might be wrong, you can correct me. And clearly, I mean, you must have heard the statistic that some sort of like 90% of the men that commit suicide were already in the system in some way or form of receiving some sort of assistance or help or information. So clearly, it's not quite hitting the mark currently. And I think, as a man, I feel like I can talk as a man. No, we don't tend to like sharing our problems. We don't, because as a man, it's in our interest to be perceived as strong and reliable and someone that can be relied upon. So sort of sharing those weaknesses can make you feel a bit vulnerable. But what we do love is improvement. We do love getting stronger, bonding with other people, having a chat, having some banter, pulling together. And I suppose that's why what I love about Stand Tall is that you're giving people an outlet. What was that I heard before is when women share a problem, it's face to face. But when men share a problem, it's shoulder to shoulder. It's like you're doing something together, and then it enables you to sort of to open up. Was I completely wrong with that?
I think you're spot on. And the study you're referring to is like that 91% is that a study from Manchester University back in 2021. And it looked at like So men who completed suicide, when they looked at all their visits to doctors and frontline services, 91% had access to some form of frontline service, which, like, you think about that on its own, that's bonkers. So a guy is 3 months away from completing suicide. At the most, it could be shorter period of time. He's gone to a doctor. He's rocked up in A&E. He's spoken to some health professional. And what's happening there? There's also a lot of things. One is that man's ability to express his problems might be a bit not particularly helpful for him. Help-seeking behaviours. You might be getting help, but conveying help and asking for help might be a different thing. Or it could be the case that we're just very poor at spotting men who are really struggling. And so there's a lot to talk about there. I think all the points you made are absolutely right, I think. And I think you said it really well, if I'm honest.
Thank you. Right, I know everyone here hates adverts, but this one actually keeps the lights on here at Rokman. And I promise not to try and sell you any useless supplements. This one, I think you'll actually find value in. So if you're a runner that enjoys challenging themselves, and let's face it, you probably are if you're watching this clip or episode, then don't forget to check out Rokman. Rokman offer weekly running challenges that you can take part in at the comfort of your own location to give your training spice and purpose. Because you shouldn't have to wait months for a race day event to roll around in order to test yourself. We also offer training and apparel and practical advice from industry experts who've been there, done that, and got the t-shirt, and a community of like-minded individuals who love testing themselves as well. Plus, it's absolutely free to sign up. If you want to check it out, click the link down below. Now, back to the episode. Yeah. I mean, recently I had a small bout of my own issues. Believe it or not, I discovered some underlying trauma that I'd had. Don't worry, this ain't a counselling session. I'm over it now. I can talk about it, but it's quite sensitive at the time. We're only talking probably a month or two ago. But it was some underlying traumas that I'd had from being bullied growing up, like really heavily bullied. It's quite funny what we can do as humans is take a traumatic experience and. I don't want to get into the details, just believe me, it was traumatic, and we can take those experiences and box them up nice and neat and just shove them to the back of the mind, like never to be thought about again. And it's weird, like I had to ask myself some questions recently of why I act the way I am, maybe why I was drinking and heavily binge drinking and stuff, and the way it's sort of maybe the way I talk to people or treat people, and some people are it's not very nice and stuff. It's just it turns out it came from just this overwhelming need to be liked, to be accepted by people, and then I kept following that trail back as why do I have this? And it turned out that it's because at one point in my life I was really not accepted and completely the opposite, ostracized and stuff like that. So it all came from there. It's weird. I was in the biscuit aisle of Morrison's and I've been trying to work out why I'm like this, and I came across a memory, and I've thought about that memory, and I'm there picking chocolate digestives and I just burst out crying in the aisle, and I was like it was weird. It was like you're crying but you're not like upset. It's just, I don't know, it's like a release after all these years. Finally that trauma's been identified. I can release and release it. I must look pretty weird to the shoppers. I suppose. And then over the coming weeks, it was addressing those sort of memories and stuff. And it was like finding a box of crap in your house that when you moved in, you've never sorted through it, and you sort of had to go. It's like, oh, for God's sakes, now we've got to go through all this. But and at first you don't know where everything goes. It took a while of sort of replaying the memories, sorting it all out, but go through it once and go, no, that's not quite right, and then thinking through it again. And then finally I got everything in the place. But during that time, it was almost like, I don't know if I blame the sort of mental health scene at the moment, but there's a lot of dwelling on problems and ruminating on your issues. And I wasn't immune to that. I sort of did myself. And, you have some, I'd say, dark thoughts. You do. It's, whether they're serious or not, I don't think they were, but it's almost like, because you see it everywhere. I don't know if you probably see it as you get on as a mental health nurse, as your algorithm, you're constantly told about, talk about your problems, or suicide awareness. Oh, people do this, people do that. It's almost like it allowed me to think like that. It was weird, and I don't know if I've got the point out correct. What I'm trying to make is that I think a lot with the mental health scene at the moment, there's a lot of just woe is me, dwell on your issues. Whereas you've got people like yourselves who stand tall, who are talking about improvements. And eventually I sorted it all out. I got past it. And then it was back to, right, let's be the best version of myself that I can. And it's almost, I suppose there's a time and place for talking, therapy, stuff like that, or talking about your issues. But I think the sooner you can get someone to sort their traumas out and then get back on the right path, the better. But some people aren't encouraged to sort of ever really get on the right path. It's all about talk about your problems. Let's go over them again. There must be a point where you're like, right, come on now, let's get
I think you touched on something really important. And when it comes to kind of traumatic experiences, and a lot of like therapies that help treat people who've gone through a lot of difficulties, the past is just context. There's no therapy that goes back in time and fixes those problems. A lot of it is to do with like what you do differently now. Isn't it? As humans, we learn very well by proxy. So if you're around good people and you're in a supportive community and support environment, and you're encouraged to kind of look after yourself and prioritize yourself, do things that are good for you, that can be as good a therapy as anything, can't it? And then those kind of traumatic experiences might kind of heal somewhat themselves because you're in that environment. And you're right. I think there's a lot of very, very big authors. I won't name any. I don't want to get myself into trouble. But a lot of very, very big, prominent authors who preach and talk a lot about past traumas. And the answer is going back to the past, addressing these things and fixing those problems. And this is what's holding us back in life. And the issue there's grains of truth to it. That there is, because the experience you had of being bullied, when those experiences happen to us in our younger years, they just change the way we see the world. They change how we see ourselves. They change how we cope with the world. And just an example now, and I'll be really vague with details here because someone I know grew up with lots of kind of alcoholism in the family. As a very young person, had to like basically shield everyone else's family from the person who was drinking. I had to hide alcohol, all that kind of stuff. And as I took on that role as like almost like that parent, sort of by proxy, essentially. Going into adult life, then those urges to sort of protect other people, to deal with these problems, they don't go away. They don't evaporate when the problem's gone. They're still there. So what I meant was, in his later years, he was kind of overcompensating for his family, trying to keep control of everything, trying to manage everything, because that he's learned that's how you deal with things. You've got to. I can get my needs met when this person was a child. Get my needs met by staying in control, controlling everything, protecting everyone else. And that doesn't evaporate as you become an adult. You don't suddenly become an adult and you're a blank slate. You carry all this kind of baggage. And the answer there is not going back in the past and blaming parents or whatever. The answer is, okay, so what can you do differently now? And we know that you think the way you do because of what's happened to you. Let's shake it up a bit. Let's get you out in the world and let's get you responding differently to things. And that's where the magic happens, I think. I think a lot of people expect, I think, especially this online therapy culture and trauma culture, expect the problem to be back here somewhere. It's not. The problem, the solution is in the present, here and now. Not true for everyone. Not true. And there's different therapies that kind of address these problems. But I think it's generally true. And a lot of our solutions to our problems aren't in healthcare either. They're not in NHS. They're not in mental health care. A lot of the solutions to problems are far outside that, I think. And I think we need to be more aware of that. And again, getting on my high horse now a bit, if I'm honest. I feel myself, I wanted to mention this. And I mean this from the goodness of my heart in order to protect the NHS as well, is that so many people now will treat health services as kind of the thing they got to go to and do when there's the smallest things, you know? And it's not. There's so many answers to our problems outside of the mental health system. We don't go to A&E for absolutely everything. We go to A&E for emergencies. And I think we we do well just by knowing that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I know people who go to A&E for a bruised toe and stuff like that. It's nuts. Well, to give you an example of how sort of what the traumas that I'd faced was affecting me in my current life, which I was completely unaware of, by the way. I didn't even know that it was the reason why. But the world record for the world's largest GPS drawing of a cock and balls on foot in a single continuous effort.
I saw it and have it got news for you as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm very proud when I saw that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I hope so. But that is for acceptance. That is to be liked. It is this innate desire and like need to be liked, because at one point in my life I was not. It's all the challenges. I built a bloody mental toughness fitness brand. You know what I mean? This has all come from the experiences that I'd had. It's weird how it does affect how we live our lives. And it was weird. And as soon as I addressed it and realized it, it all melted away. All that need is just gone. It's funny, isn't it? Like how you can do that. Yeah. There's a lot on social media at the moment. There's a lot of bashing of poor old Stephen Bartlett talking about his 3 glasses of wine and wrecking his life. How do you sort of see the self-improvement scene at the moment? And do you think that it is productive or not to a mental healthy well-being?
I think it sets a lot of very, very high unachievable standards that aren't available for most people. I think if you're in the top echelon of society with lots of disposable cash and time, by all means, yeah, engage in this 10-step breath protocol before bed. I know, whatever. I get it. And if that floats your boat and you do it regularly and it makes you feel great, fantastic. But I think for the majority of people who are going about life, and we just talked about this before we started, life's really busy. It's hectic. Got kids, family, trying to make ends meet, money. Things are tight. And I'm not sure how helpful all these things are. And I think I want to shoehorn John Barry in. So John Barry is a psychologist who set up the Mayo Center of Psychology. Does some fantastic work around, really bringing the talk around men's mental health to the forefront. And male psychology is great. And he did these couple of really big, I'm going to butcher it, by the way, but he done these couple of really big sort of surveys and studies. I think it's like 20,000 people across Germany, UK, US. I think it might be a couple of studies. And it looked at kind of core values and so the positive attributes that men sort of have. And one of the biggest predictors of men's like well-being was the kind of personal growth. So if a man feels like he's growing, and I think men in particular, I think more so than women on average, is that we've got this kind of desire to grow and self-develop and improve ourselves, I think, which I think is a really fantastic trait to have. It's amazing. It can be a superpower, but I think a lot of social media is hijacking that need that men have and just running away with it. I think I had to get rid of Twitter at one point because it was just endless bump self-development stuff. And the large majority of this audience is bros, and it's bro science. It's people who are quoting Stephen Bartlett and Andrew Huberman and all these things. And I'm not sure how helpful that is. And I always say, I said earlier on that there's never one problem, one cause, one problem. It's always a whole host of causes that lead to a problem. I just think that we've got to live just a decent life across the board in lots of different areas to have the best outcome, to improve ourselves, develop the best. We can't go find that in one protocol. You can't expect to go, I don't know, just cold water dips and just allow that one thing to improve your life. You can't just do a breathing exercise to improve your life. You can't do all these protocols and stuff. It's much more complicated than that, I think. But it's also easier in many ways.
Yeah, but the thing is, these people like Stephen Bartlett, these podcast hosts like Stephen Bartlett or the Spencer Matthewses of the world, they're coming at it like they're trying to help you. But I'm telling you what, they're not. All they want to do is build their platform, get the views, get the clicks in order to sell you product that you probably don't even need, or you definitely don't even need. Some useless supplements or something like that, or some biometric sensor that plugs into your arm.
Yeah,
so the
we've
Whoop
bought
bands.
them, haven't we?
Yeah,
That's
well, we
the problem.
have.
Yeah.
But what they do is they're preying on our sort of primal instincts, and I think I don't know if this is right, but it's sort of love in terms of relationships, sex, money, and status. And what they're doing is they're just plugging into these sort of self-improvement bits, or being stronger, being fitter, getting more money, because it's a primal urge of ours. So it's an easy hit to get, and then.
Yeah.
And then off the back of that, they don't care about us. They don't care if they're actually helping at all. They just want you to click, watch, and consume. They don't really generally care. That's the thing. And I think we're building this. There's money in it, isn't there? There's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a really poor comparison, but just thinking about the manosphere. What's his name?
Louis Theroux.
Louis Theroux, yeah. That is it's the similar problem there, isn't it? Where it's just what sells, what clicks, and this whole ecosystem's here sort of set up around that premise, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's what the more clicks, the more views, the more you can sell. Yeah, it's but yeah, I think it's across the board, and like I think we've got to be really careful when it comes to, especially kind of looking after our mental health. You know, I went through a stage of having better help, like and all these kind of counselling services, just constantly just sort of selling counselling. And we don't necessarily need those things in our lives. But yeah, if I had my way, and I would probably, and I say to people I work with, I encourage them to take breaks from social media. Just the drawbacks of it tend to outweigh the positives, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we should be knocking on the head, because a lot of these things are very, very unhelpful when you kind of really crunch the numbers and think about your health and well-being. They drag us down and can really affect us, and anyone would benefit from, appreciate we're both on social media and we're trying to promote what we do, and we're shooting ourselves in the foot here. But yeah, I think large people should knock it on the head, I think.
So coming back to Stand Tall, how's it been going? What's the reception been like?
It's been great. So what we've done now, we do like a Monday night meetup where we meet up on a place called Health Hub on High Street in Barry. We do our gym sessions on a Wednesday. We've got a really good little community of people. Obviously, I'd like more people to be involved, and I'd like more people to come along. But it's been going really, really, really well. It's a kind of labour of love. I'm hoping we can kind of grow it with time as well, and get a bit more sort of well known. And just kind of mention this is the hard part. Maybe you can help me out here as well. Every 10 guys who reach out, who want to pop along, maybe one of those actually walks through the door ultimately. And so I need to find that way to connect with those people who just might be a bit reluctant to, or whatever. I haven't quite found the solution to that yet. Yeah, it's something I really love. And we've got some ideas for the future, and we've got some upcoming challenges as well. We want to raise a bit of extra cash, to keep us going.
And what's the upcoming challenge?
So I can't be explicit yet because we're not entirely sure ourselves. But sometime now in the next kind of month or so, we'll be doing something and trying to raise a bit of cash. This is the idea. Let me know what you think. We want to do we're going to be doing go into a random location that's 24 hours walk away from where we are in Barry, and we need to get there by sunset.
Against the clock, against the sun.
So so basically 24-hour walk by Google Maps, but by getting there by sunset and back again. That was the idea. So we're going to do something like that. More details will come. And this is to raise a bit of cash to help our running costs, really. Just for kind of context, I think I said to you earlier, we don't get paid for this sort of stuff. We raise money for our rental fees for the places we use, and just cover some subscriptions we've got to pay for. That's basically it. And yeah.
Yeah, well, you got to think of the destination now. Like, are you thinking sort of coastal or mountainous or rural, urban?
We're hoping to get someone to do it for us, so it's a surprise. So the idea is we're going to be there at sunrise, and someone's going to give us a bit of paper, and we're going to go, crap, where the hell is that?
And you have to navigate yourself.
I have to get there, yeah.
Right,
and
okay.
We've got to try and get to location by the time the sun sets. So yeah.
And it has to be walking, you can't hitchhike?
No hitchhiking, walking, running, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of manpower, yeah.
All right, so a bit of running?
Maybe a bit of running, yeah.
So the distance you could be looking, it could be sizable.
Could be sizable, yeah.
It could be sizable. I look forward to it. You've done a few challenges, though. What was the last one you did? That was pretty nuts.
Yes, we did. First one we did was we walked from the Peak of Penavant to the Peak of Snowdon with all our kits. We had to walk at Penavant to start with. We were carrying about 25 kilos because we had all our food and water with us, and tent and stuff. Oh my God, that was one of the hardest things I've done.
Yeah.
So I think on day one, we got to Penavant to Ryder, and we covered like 38 miles on foot on day one, and it was just, I've never felt pain like it in my feet, if I'm honest. But yeah, that was good. So we raised a chunk of money for that, which really helped kind of with what we do. And then we did Cardiff Bay to Penavant and back. That was quite cool. Up the Taff Trail, which is lovely. Yeah.
That was lovely. That was a lovely one, right?
Yeah. I remember you joined us for the last few miles.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a bit painful.
Is that where you you had a number 2 somewhere really inappropriately on the way back?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
no. Was that on the Taff?
It was, yeah.
In Cardiff?
Yeah.
Look, when a man's got to go, a man's got to go. But I think, wasn't there like some other human waste there as well? So it's almost like I wasn't the only one that became on that spot anyway. So it's absolutely fine.
It was absolutely fine. Yeah, don't feel bad about that.
But it was, how many? What was that challenge? Was that was 50 miles, something like that?
Oh no, can't remember the exact amount now. In the 90s, I think.
Yeah,
there and back. Yeah,
almost like maybe in a way that we wrap this episode up now is that it links on from this. You're doing challenges for your strength and well-being brand. Is there a direct correlation there? Is this something like a message that you're trying to put out? Is it's maybe it's a couple of factors. It's resilience. It's goal setting. Is this like an example that you're looking to set?
That sounds lovely, and I'll agree with you. That sounds like right. The reality is, again, we want to keep going and keep doing what we're doing, and money's a factor. And the one thing we do have is we're a bit stupid, and doing daft challenges is something that can raise a bit of cash, essentially. But yeah, I'll go with what you said then.
That sounds better.
We're kind of like, we're mirroring what the brand's all about, and
I'll copy paste and just like you can have that. We'll put it on your website and stuff like
that.
Paul Regan, where can people follow you then? Or Stand Tall?
People can follow us mainly on Instagram at Stand Tall Wales, and Facebook, I think, at Stand Tall Wales as well. I try my best. I'm not the most active on social media. I'm guilty of neglecting it a little bit. But I do try and put things up every now and then. There's a blog up there as well. But yeah, check that out. Please give us a follow. Keep an eye on the upcoming challenge as well, because there'll be some link to some GoFundMe or some crowdfunder websites. Dig deep. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, dig deep. And again, in all honesty, the money goes on paying for rent and some mandatory subscriptions you've got to have as a small non-for-profit as well. So yeah, we'd appreciate if people could just transfer some big nugs over and sort us out.
Yeah, and it doesn't go to some director's salary or anything like that, like some 6-figure director salary or anything like that. This is frontline stuff. It's generally helping people.
Yeah.
And the money will go really far as well from in how they can help you.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, cracking. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the episode. YouTube thinks that you'll like this video next, so give that a click. Or, if you're an endurance runner that loves challenging themselves, don't forget to subscribe or join the Rokman community with the link down below. Go on, click one of the links.